everyone, I have a video tutorial for you today. It's for the Richard waist pack by OO Creations. This is a waist pack. Some of you may refer to it as a hip bag or a fanny pack or a bum bag. You can also wear it across your chest, a nice little option, or sling it over your shoulder. I know teenagers nowadays don't like to wear them as fanny packs. They like to wear it across their chest. So this is a nice option. It has a front pocket that closes with a magnetic snap. Your phone can fit inside there. On the back, there is a zipper pocket. Again, good for a phone. If you want to put your phone in there, it's nice and tight against your body. Then inside is quite roomy. My son's water bottle, it's a Gatorade water bottle, fits inside this with room for his EpiPen, asthma pump, and some other items. So it's nice and roomy. And then the strap, which I made to match the front piece here, but you can also use webbing. In the video tutorial, I will use webbing. There are instructions if you want to use quilt cotton or any other material. There are instructions in the pattern. As you can see, this pattern does not have a lot of hardware, which is really nice. It just needs the parachute buckle and then a slider. If you have a parachute buckle that is self-locking so that when you pull on it, it won't slide, you don't need a slider. Mine does have that option on my parachute buckle, but I added the slider just for some extra security because sometimes these things do tend to let go a little bit over time. I find with these on backpacks, my kids, I used to have to add a piece of elastic to help hold it in place so that it wouldn't slide. So I just added the slider, even though this has the self-locking portion on the parachute buckle. So let's get started. First thing you're going to need to do is prep all your pieces. So you'll want to cut out all your pattern pieces as instructed in the pattern. Prepare your zipper. I am using webbing as I mentioned previously, so I already have my webbing cut for my strap connector and my strap. I've prepared my zippers as well, and I've cut and interfaced all my interfacing on my pattern pieces. Another thing I have gone ahead and done is marked all my centers. So I made sure I've marked all my centers. I'll move it closer to the camera so you can see. So I've made sure to mark all my centers, and I've also added a little T at the top of each pattern piece. So you'll see here the pattern pieces for the sides. I've also marked a little T just so I know when I'm putting it together where the tops and bottoms are, so I don't get everything confused and have this flipped upside down. It just makes it easier now when before I start making the bag, just makes it easier and quicker later on. So that is just something I do to start prepping for the bag, for making it. And again, cut all my zippers, got them all prepped to size. So you'll definitely want to read through the pattern first to find out what the sizes are of the zippers that you'll need. You'll want to read through the pattern as well if you're using webbing to see how long to cut your webbing. You'll also want to note that there is a size range for the webbing, so that's just dependent on how you plan to wear this bag. If you're making it for a teenager and you know that they want to wear it across their chest, you're going to want to cut your webbing a little bit longer so it can fit. My original one here that I made this for my son. He picked all the fabrics and everything. I made my strap just enough just to fit across his chest, but also if he wants to wear it on his hip, it still fits on his hip. But on his chest, this is as loose as it can go to get across his chest. So you'll want to keep that in mind when you're making your waist bag so that you can have it fit whoever you're making it for, so keep that in mind. So once you have all your pieces cut and your interfacing attached, where you want to get started on making your bag. So the first thing we need to do is prepare the main body. So what we need for that is our front pocket with the piece of heavy stabilizer attached to it. This one here, so I already have my heavy stabilizer attached, and you'll notice I've already made my mark in the pattern. This mark here is where we are going to attach our magnetic snap. So you'll want to go ahead and refer to the pattern that's on page 3 of the pattern, and step 1 is what we are on. You want to go ahead and refer to the pattern for where to make this mark, and we're going to install our magnetic snap. Once you have your mark made for where we're placing our magnetic snap, we're going to go ahead and make the marks for the prongs. So what you need to do is take your washer and line it up on that mark and make the marks for where to put the slits for the prongs to fit through for the washer. And then we will cut those slits. I'm going to put some fray check on the side of my fabric where I cut my slits. And then we are going to install the female portion of our magnetic snap, or the innie part, the piece of the magnetic snap that has a little innie and a little indent. So you'll install this as per your manufacturer's instructions. I'm using pliers here to help push down my prongs. I'm just finding it's a little bit easier for me on my hands to be able to push it down, and I could push this nice and flat with the pliers. These are just pliers I purchased at the dollar store, just small little pliers. That just helps push the prongs down, that's all. You don't need the pliers to be able to do that. Then you'll want to apply a piece of duct tape or a piece of stabilizer over top of the prongs. This is just to cover the prongs so that they don't poke through the lining piece with wear and tear over time. Just helps protect the fabrics. If you do use interfacing, be careful when you're ironing it over the magnetic snap. You can demagnetize it, so just go around where the magnetic snap is. Don't actually iron on top of the magnetic snap. Now that our magnetic snap is attached, we can move on, and we need the remaining, or the lining pocket pieces. So this one here, we'll put the two front pocket pieces together, right sides together, so pretty sides touching. Make sure you're lining up the tops, pin it in place. And we will sew this with a full seam allowance. Again, the full seam allowance instructions and all those measurements are given in the pattern, so you'll want to refer to your pattern for all the measurements for placements of snaps, seam allowances, and everything else. So again, we're going to sew this with a full seam allowance, just across the top edge here where I've pinned. All right, so now that we have this top edge sewn, we are going to turn these items, or these pieces, sorry, so that they are wrong sides together. And I like to put a few clips just on the edges just to help hold it. And then we're going to press that top edge that we just sewed. We're going to press it nice and flat. So this edge here, you want to press this to get a nice, smooth, pressed edge. Sometimes I take my turning tool and I run it along the seam just to help push this up. Helps press it flat. And then I'm going to go press this. I'm going to go to my iron press and I'll be back. Now that we have this all pressed, we're going to top stitch this top edge, and then we're going to baste around the other three sides. So I took my clips off when I was pressing because I pressed my seam open first, then I pressed it. Again, be careful if you used a magnetic snap. Don't touch the magnetic snap with your iron. And when you're pressing the top edge, also be careful not to touch that with your iron as well. And another note, if you used duct tape when you're pressing your seam open, if you choose to do that, be careful when you're pressing with your iron because you can melt the duct tape. So again, top stitch this top edge and then baste around the three sides. There we go. We are all top stitched and I've basted around the three edges. Now we're going to move on to the next step of the pattern. Now we need our two flap pieces, so the flap with the stabilizer fused to it and our flap piece with nothing on it. You'll want to refer to the pattern and the instructions on, again, page 3, step 3, for where we're placing this magnetic snap. So it is the other half of the magnetic snap, so the piece that sticks out, so the little nub that sticks out, or the male half. We're going to make our marks for the prongs. So I'm going to do that now. And cut the slits. If you're using cotton here, you'll want to use some fray check or fray stop on the slits. I'm using vinyl, so this is a non-fraying material, so I don't need to apply it. But if you're using cotton for this, go ahead and apply some fray stop or fray check. Same thing as we did before. You're going to put a piece of duct tape or another piece of stabilizer over top of the prongs to help prevent it from poking through with wear and tear. And this piece of tape doesn't need to be perfect because it's not going to be seen. Just make sure that it's pressed down. Now that you have this installed, your snap installed, you're going to place these two pieces right sides together. Flip it all the way around. And then we will sew all the way around the three sides, not the top edge, just the three sides. So down the side, across the bottom, and back up. And you're going to stitch this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And be careful not to stitch over your stabilizer. Stitch right beside it so that you don't catch this in your seam allowance. So it'll be right beside your seam allowance. So when you're stitching, if your seam allowance ends up being a little bit smaller or bigger, sorry, than where the stabilizer is, just move over a little bit so that you don't stitch over top of your stabilizer. So I'm going to go ahead and go sew this. So there you go. You can see how I stitched my seam allowance. It ended up right beside my stabilizer, so I didn't have to worry about that. So as you can see, I've stitched all the way around. And now I'm going to trim my seam allowance or notch your curves. So I'm just using pinking shears here to trim the seam allowance, and also it helps notch the curves so that this turns out nicer. There we go. And we're going to turn this right sides out. If you were like me and you used vinyl or cork faux leather, this may be a little bit more difficult, a little bit trickier to do, but just be patient, take your time. It can turn. Then you can take your turning tools and carefully poke out your sides and all your edges. So as you saw, it was a little bit difficult for me. That's because there is the heavyweight stabilizer, the vinyl, and the magnetic snap. But I just took my time and got it pushed out all nicely. So I'm just focusing on the rounded corners right now. There we go. I can't press this with my iron, but if you are using a material that can be pressed with your iron, you'll want to take this over to your iron and give it a really good press. Press the seams. Because I can't, I'm just finger pressing it here and trying to smooth it out as flat as I can. And then we are going to top stitch around the three sides that we sewed. So we'll sew down, top stitch down the one side, go around our curve, and back up. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch now. So there's my flap. I've top stitched around all three edges, down one edge, across the bottom, and up the top. As I came around these corners, what I did was I would stop with my needle down on my material, pivot my flap just a little bit, one stitch, lift my presser foot up again, with the needle down, pivot again, put the presser foot back down, take one stitch, pivot, and do that all the way around at the corners, at both corners. This just helps get nicer corners. So again, stop with your needle down, lift your presser foot up, pivot the material a little bit, put your presser foot back down, take another stitch, and keep doing that on all corners. And that's how you'll get these nice rounded corners here. So now we are done with the flap. We are going to place our flap to our exterior. So we need the pocket piece we constructed and our exterior front piece. So we will grab all those pieces now. So here they are. This is what we need for this piece that we're going to be constructing now. So first thing you're going to do is place your front exterior on your table right side up, and we're going to place the constructed pocket we constructed earlier on top of this, matching up the right sides together. So your magnetic snap piece, the innie piece, will be facing up, and you're going to match up the bottom and side edges. So pin it in place and match up all these edges so that they line up. And then we are going to base the front pocket in place to the front piece. We're going to baste around the 3 sides. So start on the side, sew down, and then go across the bottom and back up the side. Don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. Okay, now our pocket is attached. Looks like that. Now we need to attach our snap, or a flap, sorry, with the snap. What I do is snap the snap together, just like that. And you want to find the center of your flap. So I just press it with my fingers and I find the center. You can actually unsnap it here if you want while you're doing this. So while I find the center, and then I'm going to match up the center with the center mark. Remember I was saying when I first started that I make all my center marks. I'm going to match the center of my flap with my center mark. And then pin it in place. And then I just snap my snap back together just to make sure that it's straight. And if it's not, I kind of just shift it a little bit just to get it nice and straight so that it's not crooked when it's on your waist pack. So it'll be just like that. So it is going to stick up a little bit. If you can see here, see how mine has a bit of a lift here. This here is normal. You want that to be like that. Don't make it so that this is flat. Otherwise it won't work once the fanny pack is constructed. Because of the shape of the fanny pack, you need this little gap right here. So this will lift up. So we're going to top stitch or baste stitch this in place just along the top edge. So there you go. That's how it'll look when it's constructed, when it's sewn onto the front. Again, it has that little lift, as you can see here, and that's how it'll look. Next, we need our, I'm going to put this off to the side, I grabbed that. We need our side pieces. So these are our side pieces. And again, I marked the top. I'm going to put that off to the side. I marked the tops where everything was so that I know where the top of the side pieces are. And we're going to lay this completed front panel piece right sides up. And we're going to lay these sides, front sides, on the front center. And you want to line up the side edges. So I'll pin it in place and I'll show you how it'll look. So the side edges, so this is the top of my front side. The side edges will be the side here where it has the smaller little slant cutout at the top and then goes down. And that is the piece that you're attaching. So when you see the top piece will be facing where I have a T. It's closer to the flap, not down here. So that's how it'll look when you pin it. So you can go ahead and pin both sides. So again, the T, I know that's the top. I'm going to pin this in place. And then what we're going to do is sew these to the front using the full seam allowance. So you'll just sew the sides, that's it, just these side pieces here to the front. You'll use a full seam allowance to sew these. So remember I was saying it had this top part cut out here. That's actually, you'll know that you're sewing a perfect seam allowance if that is where you start and stop sewing, is at that little cutout. So that's how it's going to look right now with the sides sewn on. So you have a piece that looks like this. We're going to press these sides. I'm using a material that I can't press, so I'm just finger pressing with my hands. Piece of thread here that needs to be trimmed. So this next part is going to be a little bit tricky, but just take your time. You can do it. You're going to top stitch where we just sewed, and you're going to top stitch on the front side panel. So what I do is I sew it so that this is curved up, and I sew like this. So I take this and I put it on my presser bed, or my bed of my machine, and then I sew it so that it's curved. So again, we're going to top stitch these front sides using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Again, I stitch with it like this, but you can sew this edge with it like that, whatever you're more comfortable with. Just take your time and go really slow to get a nice top stitched edge. So there it is. It's all top stitched. You can see the edge is top stitched on both sides. Again, it is a bit tricky because of the shape. It naturally wants to curve the way it would curve when it's on our body. But just take your time, find which way you find easier to top stitch. So as you saw, mine was on my machine so that it was like this. I kind of held this up so that this kind of curved and it went more natural this way. If you find it easier to top stitch it with this curved this way, whatever works for you to get that top stitched. And that's how it'll look once you have that all top stitched. Another thing to note is you can also, after you stitch these together, is notch little V's in this or use your pinking shears and trim it down. That'll also help this curve a little bit better. I didn't do that. I didn't find it was necessary for me, but if you need to do that, go ahead and do that before you top stitch. We're going to repeat that same process that we did for attaching these side panels to the front exterior for the lining. So we'll put our front exterior off to the side for now, and then our lining. So again, find the top edge and the top edge of your front center and the top edge of your front sides and match them up. Match up the sides. So if this was the top, these are the sides. So here's the top. This would be the side right here. Match it up to the side and pin in place, and repeat the whole process of pinning and stitching this in place like you did for the front center, including the top stitching. And this is where, if you want, you can notch those V's or trim the seam allowance with your pinking shears. I don't find it's necessary for this, so I'm just leaving it. And there you go. Your lining will resemble the way the exterior looked. And that is all completed, top stitch with the sides attached. You can go ahead and put this off to the side for now. We are done with the fronts. Next, we need our zipper. This is the zipper that is for the top of the bag and our zipper tabs. If you have a zipper that doesn't have your sliders already on it, you'll want to go ahead and put your sliders or zipper pulls on the zipper tape now. I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel that shows how I do this, so I will link it below in the description. Again, if you don't have that, you can go ahead and add them now. For this bag, you can use 1 or 2 pulls on your zipper. I'm going to show you this bag with 2 pulls for this one, but on my other bag, I only used 1 pull, so you can go ahead and choose which one you want. Now we're going to place our zipper tabs. And the measurement, for your zipper is given on page 4 in the pattern, and it says add the top, and it's step 1. So we're going to go ahead and attach our zipper tabs. So you're going to take your exterior zipper tab with your zipper right side up and place your exterior zipper tab right side against the right side of the zipper, so pretty sides touching, and pin it in place. You're aligning the short edges of the zipper tab to the zipper. Then you want to take this over, flip it over, and you want to place your lining zipper tab against the lining side of your zipper. So this will be the right side of the lining tab against the wrong side of the zipper. So the zipper is going to be sandwiched in between the lining and exterior zipper tabs. And if you look, your lining and exterior here, they are pretty sides touching with the zipper in between. So I have pretty sides and zipper in between, and that's how it looks. And you're going to stitch this with a full seam allowance. You'll repeat it for both sides of the zipper and the remaining zipper tabs and the remaining side of the zipper. So stitch this with the full seam allowance given in the pattern. Now we're going to press the tabs away from the zipper. You could take this to your iron and press it. I'm just going to give it a finger press. Do this for both sides. Press the tab away from the zipper. Just like that. So you have one piece like that. And then we are going to top stitch the zipper tab with the seam allowance given in the pattern. So just on top of your zipper tab. And when I'm top stitching, because we need to trim this after, I always start and stop stitching where the zipper starts and where the zipper starts, just so that I don't go off the edge. So I just start and stop there. Once you have your zipper tabs top stitched, you're going to take your scissors and trim the zipper tabs so that they are even with your zipper tape. So you'll notice my tabs are wider than my zipper tape on both sides here. So I'm going to trim this so that it is even with my zipper tape. You can use a rotary cutter to do this. I'm just using my scissors. So just like that, so that it is even with your zipper tape. There we go. I have my zipper tabs trimmed so they are even with my zipper tape. Now you want to place the zipper right sides together with your constructed front. We'll want to find the center of our zipper first. So fold the zipper in half to find where the center is and make a mark. I'm just using a pencil and I'm staying within the seam allowance. This way here, if I do press this with an iron, it won't erase on me and I won't have to find it again. So now we need to line up that center mark with the center mark that we made when we first started. So we have a center mark on our front. I've unclipped my snap just because I find when it's snapped, this kind of gets in the way, this little lift that it has here. So I just unsnap it just so that it's not in my way. And because I'm using two zipper pulls, it doesn't matter which way my zipper is facing. But if you are using one and you do intend on this to be worn on the chest, you want to make sure your zipper is oriented either so that it closes towards going up or closes down, whatever you prefer. I prefer it to go up, so I like to make sure whoever I'm making it for, I know what side they're going to wear it on. And I install my zipper so that it will be closed going up instead of down. But I'm using two, and that's the nice thing about two zipper pulls is they can actually place it open and close however they want. You don't have to worry about that. So I'm just pinning my zipper all across the top, lining up the middle and the sides, lining up all the raw edges, just like that. And you'll see there's my two zipper pulls. So now we are going to baste this in place on the zipper to the front, sorry. All right, so once we have that basted, the zipper basted to your front exterior, you need your lining piece that we constructed with the sides. We're going to place the lining right sides together with the wrong side of the zipper, line up your centers, and pin in place, and then you will stitch this with a full seam allowance. When you're lining up your centers, also line up your side panels where they're stitched. You want to line up those seams as well, just so that everything is nicely lined up when you flip the bag. Another option for the lining, if you like how the front pocket is, you can go ahead and add that. So you'll cut out the extra pieces and add that to your lining so that you'll have a little slip pocket. You don't need to add the flap. You can just add this little slip pocket piece and that'll be inside your lining. So that's something you can add if you want to have a few extra pockets on the lining. So you would just cut out that extra front pocket piece, and the same way you constructed this, you will construct the lining minus the flap. If you like the flap, by all means, you can go ahead and attach a flap as well. That's totally your choice. But it is not necessary on your lining. It'll just become a slip pocket basically, which is nice for slipping any important items inside. If you have, like I do, an EpiPen or an asthma pump, you can just slip it in that little slip pocket. Now I'm going to sew this with a full seam allowance. Now we're going to take this and flip it so that they are wrong sides together. And this is again where I like to add some pins just to hold everything in place. I line up all my seams and my center mark. And this just helps hold it in place while I'm pressing this together. So you'll take this to your iron and give this a press. I'm going to press from the lining side because I did use vinyl here. So I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to give this a press. When you're pressing, be careful not to pull your zipper tape. So you just want to pull on your material and not pull your zipper tape. The reason for this is you can actually cause the zipper tape to be wavy. So don't pull your zipper tape, just pull your fabric down. You can hold your zipper tape and pull your fabric down, but don't pull on the zipper tape, just like that. So I'm going to go give this a press and I'll be right back. Now that you have it pressed, we're going to top stitch this seam here along the zipper. When you're top stitching, you want to have your flap up. You don't want to top stitch with the flap down like this. You want to have the flap up. So just make sure it stays up. So we're going to top stitch this with the seam allowance given in the pattern, just along that edge where the zipper is, right here. There we go. It is all top stitched all the way across to the other side. And that is done. So now that that is done, I'm just going to snap my snap back in place. And we now need to add our top to our bag. So you'll grab your top exterior. This is what it'll look like. So the top, you would naturally want to think it would be the straight edge. The top is not the straight edge. The top is this curved edge. So we're going to line up those center marks that we made on the zipper with the center mark on our top, and we're going to pin it in place. You're going to stop pinning when you reach this edge here. So there was a mark on your pattern piece that you needed to make. So you're going to take that pattern piece and make the mark if you haven't already. So you'll see I transferred the mark here. So that's where you're going to stop pinning. That is your start and stop mark for sewing. So once you have it all pinned, you'll notice it's going to make it curve like this. Don't panic, that's right, that's how it's supposed to be. The other thing you're going to do is those marks you made, so where I said to stop pinning, you can stop pinning, but you can also just place a pin there to help hold it in place for now. But those marks are your start and stop marks for sewing. So you're going to start at that mark and stop at the mark on the other side. You do not sew any further than that. So we are going to sew this together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And your zipper, you'll notice, will be longer than the top. That again is right. Don't panic if it is longer. That is right. That is how you want it to be. So we'll sew only between those two markings. Now your zipper is going to be in the way a little bit when you first start. So just zip it a little bit closed just to get the zipper head out of the way. And then once you move past just enough, you can zip it back open all the way. And you'll do that on the other side here where the zipper is as well. So I started and stopped sewing at these lines I made, and I stitched it with my zipper open. I just find that is easier to get around that curve without having to move this extra bulk underneath around. Next, we are going to attach the lining top to our zipper. So you're going to do the same thing, pinning it so that the centers match up. So here's where I stitched my top. So I'm going to attach my lining up the center. So the lining right side is wrong side touching the zipper. So just like this. So the zipper is sandwiched between those two tops, just like that. So lining right side, zipper wrong side, and then my exterior is right side to the right side of the zipper. Pin this all the way. This will also have those same marks that you made for starting and stopping. So you'll want to make sure you start and stop sewing where those marks are. So again, I'm going to open up my zipper. I find it easier to sew this with the zipper open. And repeat the same process as when we attached the exterior zipper, exterior top, sewing this time with a full seam allowance. And starting and stopping at these marks. Another thing you want to do when you get to these marks is you want to angle off your stitches right at these marks. So you're going to go on an angle, so you're going to sew on an angle how my pencil looks, just like that, off those stitches. So you're angling out to the corner. And there we go. I've angled out my stitches. I know it's a little bit hard to tell, but my stitches go out on an angle. So now we're going to take this and we're going to turn this right sides out. And you want to give this top a press to get it nice and flat, because the next step we're going to top stitch this top piece. So I'm going to go to my iron and give this a press. Now that I have this all pressed, I'm going to top stitch this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. You'll want to start and stop top stitching where you started and stopped sewing. So at those lines you had made on the top. So here you'll want to stop and start top stitching there. So I'm going to top stitch this now. Take your time going around that curve. I also find it easier to top stitch this with my zipper open. Just again, it just helps keep this extra material out of my way. And I'm just giving this another little run through with my turning tool just to help flatten those seams out. There we go. So again, starting and stopping where you made those marks. You can tell where they are because your material is not attached. So you can tell where those marks are to start and stop sewing. So there's my top. It's all top stitched, all attached. You can already see the bag starting to take shape. And we have our lining top and our lining front all attached. Next, we're going to work on our zipper pocket. So we're going to put this off to the side for now. And we're going to grab our zipper pocket pieces and our zipper pocket zipper. So you need these zipper pocket panels. We're going to find the center of our zipper. I just mark within the seam allowance. So first thing we're going to do is line the centers of the zipper pockets with the center of the zipper. Line them all up. You're going to place your zipper, pocket zipper, so it is right side up against the right side of the lining panel. It'll seam backwards, but that is how it is. It'll all make sense once we install this zipper pocket. So line up your center marks. And pin it all the way across. And you will sew across this top edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern, and that is on page 5. We are on construct the back and strap, and this is step 1. Another thing, if you're using a zipper that doesn't have stops on it, go ahead and stitch back and forth across the ends of your zipper just to create a new bar tack or a zipper stop. That'll prevent your zipper from coming off when you're sliding it around. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to just press this away from the zipper. So press your zipper pocket panel piece away from the zipper. And we need to attach this second zipper pocket panel. So again, I'm going to find my center. Because the zipper is cut to the length of the lining panel, this isn't really important marking your centers, but it does help to make sure that everything lines up, especially if you're using a zipper that is longer. If you don't make those marks, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. You can still ensure that everything is lined up, because when you're pinning, your sides of your zipper pocket will line up as well. So pin this in place, and again, you'll sew across that top edge so the zipper is right side up, and the lining zipper panel, is right side up as well. So the wrong side of the zipper is touching the right side of the zipper panel. So it's like this. When you place it up, you see the nice side of your zipper with the wrong sides of your zipper panel. When you flip it over, you see the pretty sides of the zipper panels and the wrong side of your zipper. Again, stitch this in place. We are going to give this a press. You can take this to your iron and press it. I'm just finger pressing it. Just like that. We're going to push this off to the side for now. And now we need the zipper facing, the pocket facing. So this is where you need to make some marks on your pocket facing. So you'll want to refer to the instructions on page 5. This is step 3. So you'll refer to that and you'll make your zipper facing marking. So I'm going to do that and I will be right back. Okay, so I've made the marks on my zipper pocket facing as per the instructions that Tara gives. I've also made center marks on my zipper pocket facing. This is just helpful for when we're attaching this to our bag. Now we need the back panel piece. So we're going to fold this in half and make a crease down the center. This zipper pocket can also be placed on the lining of your bag. So you would do this on your lining panel piece instead if you want. It is really a preference. You can also add this to the exterior and add one to your lining if you like lots of pockets. So again, just like you did with the front, if you want to add the pocket on the front, you just follow the same instructions. Same thing for this zipper pocket, just follow the instructions, but you would do this on your lining piece. That is all. So in the pattern, Tara gives measurements for where we're going to place this zipper pocket facing on our back panel. So I'm going to go ahead and pin mine in place and do all that, and I will be right back. Again, the measurements for where to place this are on page 5 of the pattern, and you want to refer to step 4 for the placement of this zipper pocket facing. So now that I have my zipper pocket facing pinned to my back exterior, I've used the measurements and instructions given on page 5, step 4, for where to place this. I'm going to sew around this entire box to create the zipper opening. Just a tip, when you get to these corners, to prevent your stitching from going on an angle, so angled stitching so that it kind of almost skips a stitch, get to the corner, reduce your stitch length to the smallest amount that you can. So on mine, it goes to a 0 or a 1 if you have a 1 on your machine. Take one stitch, increase your stitch length back to the length you like to use for stitching, stitch all the way to the corner, do the same thing here, reduce your stitch length to the smallest amount that you have on your machine, and then continue stitching. Do that in each corner. Make sure your needle is down when you are changing your stitch length both times. Now I have it sewn, so we need to cut the center of this zipper opening. So to cut the center, what you want to do is just take your seam ripper and start a hole and just make a little line. Another thing you can do is actually find the center of this zipper pocket square here, or rectangle here, and draw a line down the center so you know where to start and stop, not start and stop, so you know where to cut. The other thing to do is you need to make a V here in the corner. Careful when you're cutting that you don't cut your stitches. So as soon as I'm done cutting mine, I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just cutting down the center. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm stopping about a 1/2 inch away from the end to make my V's. And I'm careful that I'm not cutting into my stitching. However, if you do accidentally cut into your stitching, don't panic. Just take your back to your machine and re-stitch around those corners that you snipped. This will just help re-secure those corners that you snipped those stitches. I've done this a few times and I've had to re-stitch those stitches in those corners. There we go. So you can see I have cut a little V. So I've cut along the center and I've made little V's. That just helps turn those out and get those corners or those small side edges turned out. Now we'll take this to our machine, or to our iron, and we're going to press this when we turn it right sides through our pocket. So we're going to push it through your pocket like this. It's a little bit hard because I don't have my iron, but you're going to push it through your pocket opening so that the wrong sides touch, and it'll look like that. You won't see it at all. So go ahead, take this to your iron and give this a press, turning it through the pocket opening. So that's how it'll look when it is pressed. So you have your zipper pocket facing, pushed through so you see the right side against the wrong side of your back, and then you see it here, just like this. Something I like to do, just a little extra thing I do, it's a tip, is I like to tape this down so that it stays nicely pressed while I'm sewing. So I just run a piece of painter's tape just along the edge and I press it down, and that just holds this down so this stays nice while I'm stitching the zipper pocket in place. This is not necessary. This is just a little tip I do. Just a little trick that I wanted to share with you all. So just like that, I remove the tape after so the tape doesn't stay there. If you forget the tape there, though, it's not the end of the world. It's within the bag. Nobody will see it. And that just helps hold it in place. Another thing you can do is use double-sided tape. Run a piece of double-sided tape along the top edge of your zipper facing here, and then press it down with your double-sided tape. Just a few options, but this way here, I'm not using double-sided tape. I'm just using my tape, painter's tape, and I just peel it off after. Now we need this constructed zipper pocket that we did. So find which way you want your zipper to go. Whichever way you want is your choice. You're going to place this back on top of the zipper. So your zipper is facing right side up, so you see the pull. Your back will be right side up, and you will place this so that the zipper is centered in the zipper opening. So place it so it's centered. And then we're going to stitch around the box using the seam allowance given. So you're just stitching along the outer side of the box. You're top stitching that opening. You're top stitching this down. You can use double-sided tape on top of your zipper to help hold this down. So you'll run a piece of double-sided tape right along your zipper on top of those stitches you made when you stitched the zipper to the zipper pocket. What I like to do again, I'm a little bit painter's tape obsessed, is just run a piece of painter's tape across to help hold it in place to the zipper, just like that. And that's what I do, and that just helps hold it long enough for me to be able to sew, and then I remove it after. So I'm going to stitch this in place with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Once this is all stitched, I'm going to remove that tape that I placed on the zipper facing. Again, if you don't remove it, it's not the end of the world. There we go. So that's what we have right now. It's just like that. Now we need to take these two zipper pocket pieces and fold the top part of the zipper pocket down. You're going to pin the sides together. We're going to sew the sides, but don't don't sew across the bottom edge. But you will notice that this one side is longer than the other. So after we sew the sides, we're going to trim this excess off the bottom. So we're going to sew our sides, move your lining or your exterior out of the way. You're only sewing the pockets, and you'll sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Once we have the side sewn, we're going to go ahead and trim this excess off the bottom. Again, we didn't sew the bottom, just the sides, moving our exterior back out of the way. So there you have it. You have a hole in your zipper pocket at the bottom. We're going to set the back aside for now. If you are using fabric for your straps and your strap anchor, you want to refer to the pattern for how to construct these. I'm using webbing, so I'm going to continue on with the instructions. The instructions for how to make your strap and your connector are on page 5, and it's step 7. So next we need to attach our strap anchor to our back. So we're going to place the back right side up, and in the pattern she gives measurements for where you're placing this. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my measurements, and I will come back. Now that we have our marks made as per the instructions in the pattern, we're going to place our strap anchor down. So you will take your strap anchor and you will place it at the mark given in the pattern. She also gives instructions for a measurement of how far you want this strap anchor to be protruding. So you'll go ahead and do that, pin it in place. Once you have this pinned in place, you will baste this to the side. You'll also repeat this step for the strap, again, placing it at the mark she gives in the pattern on step 8 of the pattern, and protruding the amount that she gives as well. So what that means, hanging over the edge, just like that. So you'll have some hanging over the edge. If you look, there's some hanging over the edge. And again, stitch this in place on the sides. Our strap is now protruding out the sides, just like that. We will set this aside for now. Now we are on our final construction. Next, we need our lining back and our front exterior. So you're going to place the lining back right side up. Then you're going to place your constructed exterior front right side up on top with your centers aligned. I'm just pinning across the top edge here just to keep everything together. And I'm going to find my centers and line up the centers on the top here while I'm pinning, because these are important for lining up the centers on your back. So again, I marked the back and where the top is. So I'm going to line up my centers. So this is going to go, the lining back is going to be right side up. Your front exterior is going to be right side up. You're going to line up your centers first. This probably seems a little bit backwards, but it all works out in the end. And you're going to pin this all the way across the top. Okay, so once you have this all pinned to the top, so you're lining back pinned to the back of the top, so this raw edge here is pinned together. I like to open my zipper again. I find it easier to stitch this with my zipper open. You're going to baste along the top edge using the seam allowance Tara gives in the pattern. So starting and stopping at the corner here, I've made sure to line up my corner edges too. I really took my time pinning this in place just to make sure everything was lined up nicely. So you're going to sew this with the seam allowance Tara gives in the pattern. This is on step 1 of page 6. This is the final construction. Another thing, a stiletto can be really helpful here for holding the layers as you sew so that nothing shifts, because this does have a bit of a curve to it, a natural curve from the way the bag is constructed. You can use a stiletto to help hold your fabrics in place as you're sewing them. So now that we have that all sewn in place, it'll look like this. Say your bottom was sewn to your bag. You could see inside that the lining is there. We need to clip the bottom curve here to our exterior. So we're going to go ahead and pin this all in place and sew it together. You're going to baste these pieces all together so they stay together. So pin all the way around, and we're going to sew this edge here, this bottom edge, all together. So clip it in place, and then we'll sew this or baste this in place together. Just like that. So now I'm going to stitch this edge to baste it all in place so that nothing shifts on us in the next step. So baste this in place. There we go. I've basted it in place. So now if you look inside, you have it so that when you look inside the bag, you see your lining right now. Next, we need our exterior back. You want to make sure your zipper pocket is open so you can reach through. This is to be able to turn this right side out through the zipper pocket. We're going to place the back so it is right side down on top of the completed exterior so far. So I just tuck my flap inside just so that it stays out of the way. And my zipper again is open. I just find this easier with my zipper open. You're going to line up your center marks. Pin it in place and then pin all the way around. Making sure to line up your corners and also tuck in your strap so that it stays in between the lining and exterior. Pin your corners. So now that we have this all pinned, it's going to be kind of hard to pin because you have some bulk here in the center. Just take your time pinning and making sure everything all lines up. And when you're sewing, just take your time sewing, making sure everything stays lined up as well. Use your stiletto to help hold the fabrics as you sew. So you could just put your stiletto down and help hold the fabrics as you sew if you need to. Take your time. What you could do is sew this top straight edge first. That gets rid of your pins, back stitch at start and stop, and then you can sew around the bottom curve. I'm just going to sew straight across the top, back down around the bottom curve. When you get to your strap anchor and your strap, you want to back stitch over this just to help reinforce it, and then you are done and we will continue on after that. So I'm going to go ahead and sew around the entire outer edge of the back using the seam allowance given in the pattern for sewing this. Again, I have my zipper open. I just find this is easier to stitch with the zipper open at the top, but you can choose to stitch this however you feel more comfortable. If you feel more comfortable with the zipper closed, go ahead and close your zipper. Oops. Don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. So there you have it. Your back exterior is stitched, so it looks like this. We're going to trim our seam allowances down with pinking shears. When you're trimming, don't trim where the straps are. Leave that area untrimmed. So what I like to do is just cut right below, just so that I don't cut up to there. And another thing is your corners, you're going to trim them on an angle. This just helps your corners poke out nicer. So trim those on an angle, avoid cutting your stitches. If you're worried about those corners, you can go ahead and restitch them. So I'm just going to restitch them for extra reinforcement. I just like doing this so that when I'm poking my corners out, I don't accidentally push too hard. This just helps add that extra reinforcement in that area. So again, I'm going to continue trimming my seam allowance down. Careful not to cut where your stitches are. we're going to turn this right side out through the opening in the zipper pocket. This is where you'll want to use a turning tool to help really push out those corners as much as you can. I'm just trimming down the bulk of it more to help my corner turn out a bit better. Careful not to trim my stitches. Because these corners are pretty bulky, you may not get a perfectly straight corner, a sharp corner, and that's okay. Just get them pushed out as much as you can. This is how it'll look once you get it all pushed out. So you have your corners pushed out. No hardware attached. We're going to close this opening. So pull your zipper pocket out of your zipper pocket lining out of your zipper pocket and turn it so that the seam is pressed. Take this to your iron and give it a press. I'm going to use some clips to help hold this in place while I sew. And now I will top stitch this closed. You can also stitch this by hand if you prefer. Push your zipper pocket back into the opening. I really focus on those corners, getting those corners pushed in. That's done. Now we are going to install our parachute buckle and our slider onto our strap. So first, we're going to take our parachute buckle. We're going to attach it to the strap anchor. She has a measurement in the pattern for how far to turn this under. So you're going to fold your strap anchor given the measurement that Tara gives in the pattern. Clip it in place, and then you're going to stitch this. Another thing you can do is add a rivet to hold it in place. So I'm going to actually rivet mine instead of stitching. The other thing you need to do is take your other end of your parachute buckle. You want to make sure this is not twisted, and you're going to fold the strap over. Oh, sorry, your strap slider. You're going to fold it over using the measurement she gives. I'm going to use a rivet here as well. So I'm going to, So you're going to fold it over, slide it through. This is how you want to make sure. Sorry, I was confusing myself there too. You want to slide your strap slider through. So again, as I was saying at the beginning of the pattern, some of these parachute buckles have a self-locking mechanism. You don't need to use a slider. I'm just using it because I do find sometimes over time these tend to loosen off a bit and they don't stay as secure. So I'm using a strap slider, but if you don't, you just weave it through your parachute buckle. Make sure the teeth grab it and check to see that it does pull tight. If it does, then you're good. And then for this, you can just create a little, use a piece of fabric and create a little piece to kind of tuck in here, like a little belt loop to kind of tuck it in so it doesn't come off or hang down. So making sure this is straight, you're going to weave this through your parachute buckle. Then once that's weaved through like that, so you'll see mine's self-locking. So when I pull on this and see it's not staying very tight, so I'm glad I'm using a slider because I can actually pull this. So I'm glad I'm using a slider even though it says it does lock, it won't. Now I'm going to take my strap and I'm going to weave it through the middle bar, making sure this isn't twisted, through the first bar here, going down in through the slider. Pull the strap, the loose end of the strap, So see how it's not twisted and now I have it sticking out here? And then I'm going to go back through the other side of the slider and come back out. So it looks like that. And I'm going to put a clip there to help hold it in place. And I'm going to rivet these. So I'm going to add rivets here, and I'm going to add rivets on where the slider is. So I'm going to grab my rivet press and I will be right back. All right, so we need to punch the holes for the rivets if you're not sewing them. If you don't have rivets, you can also use Chicago screws instead of rivets here. Either work. You'll still need to punch holes with your rivet for your Chicago screws, just like I'm doing for my rivets. You can use an awl to do that though. I'm going to punch a hole for my rivet, centered on my strap. Another thing I'm going to do is add some fray check or fray stop to the hole I made. Now that I have the holes and the rivets put through the holes, I'm going to press them together now. And there we go. Our strap is attached. You can adjust it. Adjustable strap. We have our interior. Again, if you want, you can add a zipper just as you did on the back. You can also add this front slip pocket to the interior. The choice is really yours. And now your waist bag is complete. You can take it out, show it off. You can give this bottom a press here just to make sure that that seam is nice and crisp. There you go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and maybe picked up a few extra tips along the way. I'm looking forward to seeing all your Richard waist bags posted in the OO Creations Facebook group on Facebook. Also on Instagram. Don't forget to use the hashtags for the Richard waist pack as well as OO Creations. They are given in the pattern. Thank you very much for watching. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing all your completed Richard waist packs. Have a wonderful day. Bye.